me, I have always been very fascinating with the brain, what it does, and the power of the brain. The power of our brain is actually limitless. We barely use maybe a fraction of 1% of our brain. Maybe as a psychiatrist, maybe because I studied the brain and how it can affect our lives, I have been always fascinated with it. So I wanted to share some of this information with you today, and maybe you will understand my fascination with it. We all can become caterpillars that after a while become beautiful butterflies. And the caterpillar to a butterfly doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without challenges. But look at the result, look at the beauty, look how it's all worth it. So the first thing I want to ask you, how many of you met someone, for example, or heard about someone that won the lotto and had $100,000, but the only thing that they could think about is how much tax they're going to pay? Or someone that graduated from Harvard with honors, and the only thing that they could think about is that it was a gloomy day, forgetting that the graduation, forgetting Harvard, and they get stuck into that. Why? Because there are reasons why the brain gets stuck into negative mode, like we saw in the video. It's because we have fears. Our negative thoughts are rooted in fears. And the fears that we have are either fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of ridicule, fear of disappointing ourselves or disappointing others. So we get stuck in these negative thoughts that we are. The funny thing is, like, what we believe we are is what we become. What we think, we feel. And what we feel, we think. We need to remember that we see the world as we are, not as the world is. Everything is based on our own perceptions. And we're going to talk about our perceptions and where they come from. So the first thing that we need to understand is emotions are based from motion. Emotion, E is for energy and motion. And why we get stuck? Because we are actually, in our brain, we have this cognitive behavior where we get stuck in negative more than positive. For example, a long time ago, they used to have the little elephants when they're born. In order for them not to run away, they used to put a little rope around their front leg so they won't go away. So the little elephant will actually start resisting and resisting. But because they were little and they didn't have any strength, actually they could not move from that rope. So they just give up, and they know that they're not going to move. So even when they grow, and we all know how big the elephants grow, and they have all this strength, but they do not try to get rid of that rope, and it's still that thin rope, because they still, in their mind, they have this idea that they cannot do it. So they get stuck into that negative thinking. Hopefully they don't do this practice anymore. So why do we fear? Our brain are programmed on looking at the negative, not the positive. By default, our brain goes to the negative side rather than the positive side, because the positive side takes a lot of more work than that. So we need to start learning that we need to live by design and not by default. And why do we do that? Because, unfortunately, our brain, since the caveman, did not change, never changed. It stayed the same. So we have a tendency to look at danger and threats rather than looking at opportunities. So everything around us that the brain picks as a threat. So it keeps preventing us from being hurt. So whenever we have these negative thoughts or this fear, it's because the brain does its first primary function, and that's it's protecting us. It's on our defense. It acts like a thermostat. You know, thermostat, whenever it's to a certain degree of temperature, whenever it goes higher or lower, what happens is that the brain brings it back to that temperature. So whenever we get excited because we have an opportunity that we can do, whatever happens is that our brain makes us remember. It regurgitates all the negative experiences that we have before and the failures to bring us back into our comfort zone and status quo to protect us. And actually, the danger is not to be able to change. So what happens when the brain hits the negative thoughts? The first thing that it happens, it will, in our brain, and I'm going to show it to you in a second, our brain actually goes to an area, a little gland at the back of the head called amygdala. And this amygdala is like our alarm system. The minute it perceives, and the emphasis here is on perceives, a danger, it sends alarm to everywhere and it hijacks the blood flow. Right here. So it doesn't go to the brain, and I'm going to explain the different parts of the brain right now in a very simple way. So what happens is that the switchboard of anxiety goes high, it hits all the fear centers. And whenever it does that, we react to threat, and the brain is taken hostage. So whatever happens is that the brain becomes infected with a virus. When we have a virus, the brain, the hardware is not infected, it's the software. So we need to clean it up. We use antiviral programs that at the end we're going to talk about the ABC technique. So what happens when the amygdala starts, the alarm starts going on like a car alarm, we have chemicals in our brain that gets secreted. So we have the cortisol, the epinephrine, and the amphetamine. The three of them actually what we call the stress hormones. What do? They put the body into a fight or flight mode. And I'm sure we all heard about the fight and flight mode, or even freeze. So what happens is that we get into the mode of war. What happens is that our heart starts beating faster because we need to give blood to the rest of our body. We start to breathe deeper because we need oxygen to our brain. We start to perspire because we need to keep cool. And our eyes becomes more concentrated because we are in war and we become very tense. And stress creates stress. And what happens is that we get stuck there because we don't know how to get out of that. What happens is that when we have stress, it's like we have our pedal on the brakes and we cannot push the gas anymore. So that's why we get stuck, because the brain is trying to actually protect us, like since the caveman. So this is our brain. Our brain is actually formed into three parts. The caveman part is like this part of the hand. This is what we call the reptilian. And this is the very primitive brain. This is where the fight or flight happens. And then we get the second part that we developed later on. And this is where we have short memory and the emotions. And then the third part is, it's like a golf club. The head is like the first brain, and then if we put like a sock on the head all around it, that's what becomes the mammalian brain. And then we have, if we put a helmet, that becomes the neocortex, or basically what we put on top of the neocortex where we think. So the brain, like I was saying before, this is the amygdala. This is the little thing. This is the alarm that we have in our brain. So our brain finds focus in whatever we need it to find. And that's why if we think negative, we look for negative things, this is what it will find. But if we look for positive things, this is what it will find. And this is the reason why we should stop thinking about negative thoughts. Or what we don't want, we start thinking about what we want. For example, if I keep telling my brain, I don't want to eat sweets. I don't want to eat sweets. I don't want to eat sweets. The brain, conscious and subconscious, does not know the difference between negative and positive. So all what it hears is sweets. So it will require to eat more sweets. And that's why we need always to think about what we want, not what we don't want. And that's why the brain it's like a digital thermostat that will take us wherever we are. And the brain is a muscle, so it's like the triceps. The more we do curls, the more we develop our muscle. That's the same thing with our brain. Whatever happens, whatever we think, and we keep thinking, like if we complain a lot, what happens is that the cells of the brain keep connecting each other on negative thoughts. But if we start thinking positive, what happens is that these neurons or brain cells start connecting together to make positive results. They say that the neurons that fire together work together. Meaning, and this is very important in the new science, and we're going to know in a second why. And that's why we need the more positivity that we put, the more positive results that we get. We need to find the focus because, again, our brain is based on what we call a negativity bias, where our brain picks up only the negative things, again, for our protection. Why do we actually go more default for the negative than the positive? If we remember, since we were kids, our parents, our teachers, if you go to churches, like, be aware of this, don't do this. So we actually grow in a limitation, a culture of limitations. We believe that to be happy, we have to pay the price. I come from a culture where when we laugh, we say, oh, I hope nothing bad is going to happen. It's like everything has a price. Whenever you laugh, whenever you're happy, you have to pay the price for that. And that's why we have this limitation. And we need, in order for us, the brain is conscious and unconscious. And as we know, there is right and left hemispheres. And that's why we need to always know that if inside of our brain we do not change, we cannot do it on the outside. And that's why we need to have harmony between the inside brain and the outside brain. We have two different lobes in the brain. We have the left one and the right one. Actually, the left and the right. The left is more of the analytical one, where it's very abstract, it has math and science, and it also has the language skills. Versus the right side that is artistic, impulsive, body language. It has basically our artistic and our curious side of creativity that we have. We always have a fight between both. We are prisoner of the tug of war between both of them. One half of our brain wants us to be like free and curious and adventurous and go for the unknown, and the other half is trying to keep us in status quo or in our comfort zone because it wants to keep us protected. They used to think that our brain is either thinks on the right side or on the negative or on the left side. Actually, the new neuroscience finds that the more you engage the whole brain together, the better for you. Like if we remember, she said in the video before, she said that even when she gets a positive paper, she still is stuck in the negative. And I remember that. I remember when I first started training a few years ago, I would have a room full of 50 people. And I always read the evaluation at the end. So if one evaluation out of the 50 will have the air conditioning in the room was cold, for example, and it has nothing to do with me, I will obsess with that remark forever. And I will forget that I have a 49 positive comments. And I realized that what I was doing, I was concentrating on the 5% negative and forgetting the 95% positive, which was a total injustice for me. And I looked around me and I found that all the people, actually most of the people, concentrate on the 5% they don't have and forget on the beauty of the 95% that they have. A simple switch of the brain on how to look at things can actually make us look at things in a more positive way. So this is neuroplasticity. It's a neuroscience. The old science used to think that we actually, whenever a cell dies or we have an injury in the brain, we're dead, we're toast, we're done. The neuroplasticity or the neuroscience actually, it found out that the cells can actually regenerate by itself and chunks or bridges that injury area and make more networks to go to the brain and to eliminate the brain. It's exactly like a bypass surgery in the heart when they shunt that part and they bypass the infected part, and after that things become normal. The brain can do that. Neuroplasticity can do that, where the brain can change. They found that there are brain centers actually that have a different purpose or are inactive. What happens is that when they are called to help, they will help the areas that are infected. So if they even use that in stroke patients. So if stroke patients can use their brain to become better, how can't we do it just to change negative thoughts to positive thoughts? Like I said, our brain is totally limitless. So when we have positive thinking, what happens? It's a totally different mechanism than the negative one. So we have a different blood flow, and when the different blood flow happens, we get 3 chemicals into our brain. We get the dopamine, the oxytocin, and serotonin. Without being too medical, the dopamine is what we call the happy hormone, is what makes us feel euphoric. It's what makes us motivated to move forward. After we are motivated, oxytocin hits. And when it hits, it makes that connection between us and between people. That's why when we share our news, like on social media, on Facebook, we feel like I have a better chance to succeed because I'm sharing it. I'm building trust. I'm building this connection with other people. And then we have the serotonin, that is the confidence hormone. And the trio, we call them the trio, is the performance chemicals trio of the brain. Nothing can stop you basically after that. You can become unstoppable. And it's very simple, just by shifting from negative to positive. And the more we increase our motivation pathways, actually it creates, our brain is capable to build new roads inside of our brain. Like exactly when we pave the roads, our brain can actually do that. And the best way to motivate these chemicals to be secreted is ask 3 questions. Why, what, and how? Why is this important to me? And the minute we know our purpose, we get our motivation out with the dopamine. What am I supposed to do, or what should I do? And that who should I connect with? That gets the oxytocin, and how my confidence level gets higher. And this becomes, like I said, the performance trio. So to move now, why we get stuck, it's because we usually have that habit of making everything a catastrophe, where everything is black or white, where we overgeneralize things, where we feel entitled that everything should go right. So there is a technique that I actually, it's my own technique, and it's called the ABC technique for us to overcome the negative thoughts and fears. A stands for acknowledge, name, and evaluate. Acknowledge, stop for a second and acknowledge that there is something wrong, that there is a negative thought, that there is a fear right there. And give it a name. Am I scared to be rejected? Am I scared to fail? Am I scared to succeed? Am I scared to be embarrassed? Am I scared to lose something? You know, and then name it, and then evaluate it on a scale from 1 to 10. And see where is it. And this way, when you basically sweep fear under the carpet, it doesn't go away. It comes back to haunt us even more powerful than before. So, and then after acknowledging it, we start breathing to let go. And I usually say breathe 7 times. First of all, because 7 is a divine number. And how we breathe, like when we meditate, 4 in, 4 hold, count of 8 out. So we breathe in 4 count, we hold 4 count, and we exhale in 8 counts. Whenever we exhale with it the negative thought, because we already named it on the first one, and we just let it go. The last one is challenge, commit, triggers, and retrain. We need to challenge what we think. So when I start thinking, I am not successful, I would stop and say, wait a minute, what is my definition of success? When I say I am not worthy, what gave me that feeling that I'm not worthy? Like if I have a phobia of planes, I will say, you know what? How many accidents have you seen from a plane? And what's the percentage of accidents that happens in cars? Challenge whatever fears and negative thoughts that we have, no one said it's going to be easy. Nothing happens overnight. It's one foot in front of the other, and it's one step at a time. And we need to be committed to this to gain our life back. Again, we cannot have our life by default, but by design. So this way we can retrain our brain to look at things in a positive way. And there are easy ways to do it. The easiest way is that every morning write one thing that you're grateful for. Even just getting out of bed. And every Sunday at night, look at 7 things that you're already grateful for this week. At the end of the month, you're going to have 30 things that you're grateful for. Gratitude changes the chemistry of our brain. Gratitude gives us the happy hormone, the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin, the performance trio. Also, the power of visualization, because what we see in front of our brain is what our brain tries to attract. The more clear our vision is, the more our brain will help us achieve it. Challenge your past. You are not your past. You're not defined by your past. Let your present define your past and not the other way around. Live in the present. Live in the moment. Meditate. Exercise some mindfulness exercises. Bring back the power of your brain, the power of yourself. You all have a light. We all have a light that it's very unfair if we keep it only to ourselves. Let that positivity out. Share it with the world. Share it with yourself. Gain control of your life and help others to gain control of their lives.